Eminent 36 na Legislature Guahan is called to order. Buenas and half a day. Good morning, colleagues. We begin by recognizing Father Paul Goffigan for our prayer. Please rise.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. As we remember San Jose, the husband of Mary, on this day, his feast day, we ask for his intercession as we pray. O good and gracious God, as we approach another session of legislation, we humbly ask you to endow our legislators with your righteousness, that the judgments of their hearts and the words of their mouths will demonstrate your desire for the good of all, especially the poor and the disenfranchised. Grant them an understanding of your perfect justice, that their legislation will reflect your deep affection for those in need of your salvation. May these words spoken to one another and the motions put forward be as refreshing as rain on an arid landscape. May their decisions, their actions, and their passionate hearts serve our island as refreshing showers gushing forth on a world thirsty for your good news. Bless each and all of us that in all we say, in all we do, in everything we accomplish, we will give honor to you and your glorious name. And through the intercession of St. Joseph, we ask you to grant our petitions in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one and the Holy Spirit.
To express an unending and never forgotten gratitude by the people of Guam, the legislature recognizes recipients of Imiladan Mas Takiluna Sacrificiu on a display in the Guam Congress building and during each of its sessions. For the recognition of a recipient of Imiladan Mas Takiluna Sacrificiu, Senator Mary Torres, you are recognized.
On behalf of a grateful island and country, we honor Native Seaman, Second Class, World War II, Vicente Santos Sablan, and the family of Native Seaman, Second Class, Vicente Santos Sablan, for making the ultimate sacrifice in service and defense of our island and country.
For the recitation of the Inifresi, Senator Brown, you are recognized. Please kindly lead us.
Gininis mastaklo gini soko, I mastakulum gini corazonhu, zani masfigo na sinahu, who first in maisazu parabahu protehi, zanu defendi, I hinengi, I cultura, I lenguaje, I airi, I hanam, zanitano tamoro. Ni shakku directo ginin zu ustata, esti hua fitma gihulo I Biblia, zani banderahu guahan.
Would Senator Frank Blas please lead us in the singing of the Guam hymn, and Senator Rigel please lead us in singing of the national anthem.
Purita nota, kantai matunanya itoru ilugar. Harai honra, harai gloria, Abiba isla sempara. Harai honra, harai gloria, Abiba isla sempara. Todo y tiempo y paz para hita, zangin ni langit na bendición. Contra el peligro na fansafuham, Zus protegi Island Guam. Contra el peligro na fansafuham, Zus protegi Island Guam. what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. Please be seated for the roll call. Clerks, please call.
Senator Atta, Senator Blas, Senator Brown, Senator Duenas, Senator Moylan, Vice Speaker Munya Barnes,
Analysis Zeus Gaya,
Senator Nelson, Senator Perez, Senator Ragel, Senator San Augustine, Senator Shelton, Senator Taitagui, Senator Terlahi, Speaker Terlahi, Senator Torres. Madam Speaker, there is a quorum.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Our Assistant Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Sedus Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to approve the legislative journals dated February 12, 2021 and March 8, 2021, subject to corrections.
On the motion to approve the legislative journals dated February 12, 2021 and March 8, 2021, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing no objections, motion carries. Assistant Majority Leader Shelton, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, there are communications and petitions, and I move that they be appended to today's session journal.
On the motion to append communications and petitions to today's session journal, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objections, motion carries.
Madam Speaker, there are messages from Imegahag Guahan, and I move that they be appended to today's session agenda.
On the motion to append to messages from Imagahag and Guahan to today's session journal, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objections, motion carries.
Madam Speaker, there are reports of standing.
Motion that reports of standing committees be appended to today's session journal. Are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objections, motion carries.
Madam Speaker, there are no reports of select committees.
Thank you. Please proceed.
I move that bills introduced, bill numbers 58-36 COR and 59-36 COR and 60-36 LS through 63-36 LS and 64-36 COR through 85-36 COR and resolutions introduced, resolutions number 18-36 LS through 25-36 LS and 26-36 COR through 41-36 COR be deemed to have given their first reading.
On the motion as to the introduction and first reading of bills and resolutions, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objections, motion carries. Assistant Majority Leader Shelton, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I move to excuse senators not present for today's legislative session.
On the motion to excuse senators not present, any objection? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries.
Madam Speaker, I move that all congratulatory, commendatory, and condolence resolutions introduced today and for the remainder of this legislative session be considered first read and adopted to allow the Legislative Council to make technical corrections and to add all senators as co-sponsors.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objections, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to conduct the oath of office to our elected legislative chaplain, Father Paul Goffigan.
Thank you. Father Paul Goffigan, well, are there any objections to that motion? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. We will now conduct the oath of office for our chaplain. Father Goffigan. All right. Father Paul Goffigan, please raise your hand. Repeat after me. I, Father Paul Goffigan,
I, Father Paul Goffigan,
solemnly swear
in
in the presence of Almighty God
to Almighty God
that I will well and faithfully support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will well support the Constitution of the United States,
the laws of the United States applicable to Guam,
the law of the United States applicable to Guam,
and the laws of Guam,
and the laws of Guam.
and that I will conscientiously and impartially
I will conscientiously and impartially
discharge my duties as an attaché
discharge my duties as an attaché
of Imi-36 na Legislature in Guahan. Of Imi-36 na Legislature in Guahan.
of the 36 Legislature in Guam.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Zeus Masi Pali for your service to our Senate, our legislature. We are still on motions. Colleagues, are there any other motions? No, I'm sorry. Yes, we are on motions. Are there any other motions? Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munya-Barnes, you're recognized under motions.
Si Zeus Masi, Madam Speaker, Janmanana Si Zeus, the Committee on Public Accountability, Human Resources, the Guam Build-Up, Hagana Revitalization, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications, and Technology moves the nomination of Jeremy N.C. Cepeda to serve as a member of the...
Oh. I believe that nomination is already on legislative concurrence, so we don't need to take it up under motions. We will do that under legislative concurrence. Under motions, are there any other motions?
Thank you, Speaker.
If not, then we will proceed to legislative concurrence. Oh, sorry. Senator Rigel, you are recognized. Under motions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If you could allow me just one moment while it loads.
Sure.
I'm looking for the title, the correct title while it loads. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill 62-36LS as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture, an act to amend subsection 43.10D and 43.70, both of Chapter 43, Title 9, Guam Code annotated relative to penalties and restitution for theft of livestock or agricultural products to the session agenda.
On the motion to place Bill number 62-36LS as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture on the agenda, are there any objections?
No objection.
Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Are there any other motions? Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, Bibas St. Joseph in Iran.
Biba.
I'd like to ask that Bill 60-36LS, introduced by Senator Tello Taitigui, co-sponsored by yourself, Senator Brown, Senator Sabina Perez, Senator Frank Blas Jr., Senator Tony Ada, myself, Senator Duenas, Senator Talina Cruz Nelson, Senator James Moylan, an act to amend Section 403H of Title I, Guam Code Antet, relative to changing the official name of the municipality of Inaran to its name in the Chamorro language, namely Inalahan.
On the motion to place Bill number 60-36LS as amended by the committee on the session agenda, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. We're still on motions. Are there any other motions? If not, we will proceed to legislative concurrence. Majority Leader, Senator Nelson, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Education, Self-Determination.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator.
Oh.
Can we take them in the order that they are on our agenda right now?
That said number 3.
Yes, so Senator Perez, so we are on legislative concurrences, and we will do them in the order that they are on our, printed already on our agenda. So Senator Perez, you are recognized for the first item.
Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture the nomination of Jesse U. Boletzo to serve as a member, General Public Representative of the Guam Board of Social Work with a recommendation to do confirm.
Are there any objections? If there's any objection, please raise your hand. Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture the nomination of Nonito V. Blas to serve as a member of the Guam Land Use Commission with a recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objections, motion carries. Majority Leader, Senator Nelson, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from Committee on Education, Self-Determination, and Historic Preservation, Infrastructure, Border Safety, Federal and Foreign Affairs, and Maritime Transportation the nomination of Dr. Aldrin B. Cahagol to serve as a member of the Guam Commission for Educator Certification with the recommendation to do confirm.
Are there any objections to the motion? Please raise your hand. Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Public Accountability, Human Resources, the Guam Buildup, Hagåtña Revitalization, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications and Technology, the nomination of Jeremy N.C. Cepeda to serve as a member, General Public Representative of the Guam Public Library System Board of Directors with the recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Please raise your hand. Hearing and seeing no objections, motion carries. Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Air Transportation, Parks, Tourism, Higher Education, and the Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens the nomination of Rose P. Greeno to serve as a member of the Guam Community College Board of Trustees with the recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Please raise your hand. Hearing and seeing none, motion carries. Senator Rigel, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place into the voting file from the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Power and Energy Utilities, and the Arts the nomination of Donna W. Kloppenberg to serve as a member of the Guam Council on the Arts and Humanities Agency Board of Directors with the recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Please indicate by raising your hand. Seeing and hearing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, Senator Nelson, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Education, Self-Determination, Historic Preservation, Infrastructure, Border Safety, Federal and Foreign Affairs, and Maritime Transportation, the nomination of Ronald L. McNinch, Jr., Ph.D., to serve as a member, upper-level management and private business representative of the Guam Education Board, with the recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing no objection, motion carries. Senator Nelson, you are recognized.
Suitos Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Education, Self-Determination, and Historic Preservation, Infrastructure, Border Safety, Federal and Foreign Affairs, and Maritime Transportation, the nomination of David Q. Mercado, Jr., to serve as a member, public school teacher representative of the Guam Commission for Educator Certification, with the recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objection? Seeing and hearing no objection, motion carries. Senator Rigel, you are recognized. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Suzuki Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor Procurement, Statistics, Research, and Planning the nomination of Juan Carlo S. Pangilinan to serve as a member of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board with the recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing no objection, motion carries. Senator Rigel, now you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place into the voting file from the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Power, and Energy Utilities and the Arts the nomination of Francisco B. Rabon to serve as a member, Folk Arts Representative of the Guam Council on the Arts and Humanities Agency Board of Directors, with the recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing no objection, motion carries. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor Procurement, Statistics, Research, and Planning the nomination of Michelle B. Santos to serve as Banking and Insurance Commissioner of the Department of Revenue and Taxation with a recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing no objection, motion carries. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Suzuki Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture the nomination of Catherine C. Sinicolas to serve as a member, nutritionist, clinical dietitian representative of the Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners with a recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader Senator Nelson, you are recognized.
Suitos Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Education, Self-Determination, Historic Preservation, Infrastructure, Border Safety, Federal and Foreign Affairs, and Maritime Transportation the nomination of Chelsea T. Sinicolas to serve as a member, Community at-Large Representative of the Guam Commission for Education Certification, with the recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing no objection, motion carries. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Suzuki Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place in the voting file from the Committee of Public Accountability, Human Resources, the Guam Build-Up, Hagåtña Restoration, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications and Technology, the nomination of Catherine T.E. Taitino to serve as a member, Government Classified Service Representative of the Government of Guam Retirement Fund, Board of Trustees, with the recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing no objection, motion carries. Thank you, colleagues. We are now on second reading file. Bill 8 is the first, Bill 8-36 is the first item on our second reading file. I recognize Senator Anthony Atta.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You can just have a moment here to open it. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to move Bill 8-36 COR as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture, introduced by myself, D. Anthony Atta, an act to add a new Section 80.39.2D of Article 2, Chapter 80, Title 9, Guam Code annotated, relative to the excluding individuals convicted of first or second degree criminal sexual conduct from the sentence reductions of the Justice Safety Valve Act. To the third, and I'd like to speak on the motion.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to discuss Bill 8-36. I would like to start with a brief overview of Guam's Justice Safety Valve law, the crimes under Guam's first and second degree criminal sexual conduct law, and the change proposed in Bill 8. Guam's Justice Safety Valve was enacted by Public Law 3322. Madam Speaker, I was a member of the body at that time. I supported and voted for the bill that created the act, and I continue to support the intent of the act. The Justice Safety Valve Act was touted as a way to lessen our prison population, thereby saving money while still protecting the public. It does this by allowing judges to sentence criminals to less than the established mandatory minimum sentence, where they feel it is appropriate. A judge can do so if the judge finds that, one, imposition of the mandatory minimum sentence would result in substantial injustice to the defendant, and two, the mandatory minimum sentence is not necessary for the protection of the public. Madam Speaker, the two main issues that I have with the Safety Valve Act are that it allows judges to depart from the mandatory minimum sentences without limitation. And that I believe that some crimes are so heinous and so horrendous that the Safety Valve Act should not be used in sentencing perpetrators. Two such crimes are first and second degree criminal sexual conduct. First degree criminal sexual conduct involves penetration, and second degree does not. Here's what is common with both. The victim is 13 or younger. The victim is 14 or 15, and the perpetrator is related to the victim by blood or marriage. The victim is disabled, or the victim is 14, and an act of violence is used to accomplish the crime. The penalties are 15 to life for first-degree criminal sexual conduct and 5 to 10 years for second-degree criminal sexual conduct. Madam Speaker, in 2011, the legislature expressed its abhorrence to these crimes by repealing the statute of limitations on first and second degree criminal sexual conduct. In repealing the statute of limitations, the legislature placed these crimes on the same level of criminality as crimes of homicide. Because of the provisions of the Justice Safety Valve Act, however, a person convicted of first or second degree criminal sexual conduct could possibly escape with little or no prison time. This must change. The Justice Safety Valve Act has a place in our laws, and I continue to support most of its provisions, but not as it applies to first or second degree criminal sexual conduct. Madam Speaker, 2 years ago, the community reacted in horror as we read the news report about how a twice convicted sex offender abducted a 10-year-old at gunpoint while she waited for her school bus. He took her to a secluded area and he raped her. This crime could have been avoided if this individual had received the proper sentences for his previous crimes. His victims in those crimes were 12 and 14. What makes matters worse is that the perpetrator is eligible for sentence reduction under the Justice Safety Valve Act because his last conviction was more than 10 years ago. Madam Speaker, we cannot allow this to stand. A child who is a victim of these horrible crimes will suffer the effects for the rest of his or her life. The monster who victimizes the child may not suffer at all. Is this justice served? We should care more about what happens, about the injustice to the perpetrator. From our Attorney General, who supports the bill's intent to prevent the departure from the mandatory minimum sentences for these crimes in question. The AG supports the bill, but takes no position on specific sentences. And I believe this is because of the realization that the legislature rightfully creates the sentences for crimes. We also received testimony from the executive director of the Guam Public Defender Service Corporation. The executive director stated that there are certain situations that arise that do warrant a sentence less than the mandatory minimum in first or second degree criminal sexual conduct cases. He points to the so-called Romeo and Juliet scenarios, where a 16-year-old engages in sex with a 13-year-old. First of all, Guam has no Romeo and Juliet law. Secondly, that 16-year-old would automatically be certified and tried as an adult. Thirdly, no state in this country has a Romeo and Juliet law that allows this defense to apply to a person who engages in sexual activity with a child who is 13 or younger. The executive director also brought up another scenario where the victim may not want the perpetrator to receive a life sentence on the basis for not enacting this bill. Is this the type of reasoning that we want to use to enact legislation? I say no. The crime that this bill will exempt from the Justice Safety Valve Act are horrific, and those who commit these crimes should not be spared the justice that our laws intended. I plead with my colleagues to support this bill, Madam Speaker. You know, we just read recently in the papers the other day about an individual who was sentenced to 17 years for crimes that he committed against his victims, as young as 4 years old. What life is she going to have after that? What life is that child going to have? What life is anyone going to have? We can make the difference in this body. You know, we get tired of reading the paper. Day after day after day. Crimes against our children. Madam Speaker, I would also like to proffer an amendment that should be in the Google Drive. Madam Speaker, when the AG's recommendation was included in the committee in the amended bill, that we cite the specific sections 25.15 and 20.20, as opposed to saying first and second degree criminal sexual conduct, I became concerned that a court might interpret this exemption from the Justice Safety Valve Act to mean only those sentences in sections 25.15 and 25.20. As you may recall, Madam Speaker, around the same time the legislature enacted the Justice Safety Valve Act, it also enacted the Vulnerable Victims Act. This law adds 5 to 25 years for violent felonies that include the first and second degree criminal sexual conduct that are committed against those who are 13 and younger, 55 and older, tourists, or victims of any violent crime that were committed by 2 or more assailants. The Justice Safety Valve Act to the Vulnerable Victims Sentencing Enhancement for first and second criminal degree sexual conduct. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Atta. On the amendment, can you identify it on the drive? Is it labeled according to the clerk? Yeah, it's not uploaded
Okay,
yet.
we'll
So
see.
we're going to take a 1-minute recess.
Thank you,
If there are
Madam
any other amendments, please send them to the clerk so they can be uploaded before you speak on your amendment. 1-minute recess. We're back in session. Senator Ada, can you please identify the floor amendment? And colleagues, the clerks have a very specific address to send floor amendments that will be sent to your email addresses right now by MIS. So please note, send all floor amendments to that specific email address so that they can be loaded promptly. So we are now in the drive of Bill number 8 under second reading. And if you go further under Bill 8 to the floor amendments folder, we are now, Senator Ada, please identify your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the amendment is AB 8-VAAL5P1. That's the floor amendment for Bill 8-36. And this amendment will be on line 5, page 1, to enhancements pursuant to section 80.37.3 of 9 GCA Vulnerable Victims Act.
On the amendment, is there anyone who would like to speak on the amendment? If not, Senator Ada, I'd like to give legal a little bit more time to to review this language, if that's okay with you, and we come back to you on your amendment, to close on this amendment.
Absolutely, Madam
And
Speaker.
in the interim, if we can move on discussion on the bill,
Thank you.
we will. So if there's anyone who would like to speak on the bill, Vice Speaker Muñoz-Barnes, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If I may, would that be in a motion form just to temporarily set aside, on a point of order, just to temporarily set aside the amendment as already proffered and then go to the main motion to speak?
That's correct.
Does that need a motion? Does that need a motion?
I will entertain a motion if you'd like to make one, yes.
I'll make that motion then.
All right.
Just to temporarily set aside while legal's reviewing.
Okay.
And then to go
On the
main
motion, is there any objection? Hearing and seeing no objection, that motion carries. We will set aside this amendment and come back to it after we continue discussions on the bill. Senator Muñoz-Barnes, you're recognized on the bill.
Sijuos Masi, Madam Speaker, and thank you for giving me time to speak on this measure that I have some concerns about. And I want to share with you, Madam Speaker, although I'm in very much support of tough sentences for those who are convicted of criminal sexual conduct crimes, as the author of the previous Justice Safety Valve Act, the purpose of that Justice Safety Valve Act was to give the discretion back to the judges for sentencing criminals, defendants. And I truly believe, Madam Speaker, that our judges take criminal sexual conduct crimes just as seriously as we do here in the legislature. And I want to share with you Madam Speaker, that my biggest concern with this bill, and I know I shared the sentiments with the author, was those Romeo and Juliet situations highlighted in both the public defender's and the Attorney General's testimony. And if this were to pass, the consideration of the teenage couples that have relationships and then one becoming an adult while the other is still a minor, and we all know that and you know, we can't hide it, that there are a lot of high school relationships, a lot of seniors that go out and have relationships with younger underclassmen. And it took us really long, several terms ago, to work on a safety valve act to allow for the judges to look at cases on a case-by-case basis. And I just want to share that I don't know if it would be just if someone who was 17, just turning 18, had a relationship with someone who was underage, and then for some odd reason a CSC crime was reported, but yet there was a previous relationship, and that was one of the impetus of why the Safety Valve Act was given consideration. And Madam Speaker, I'm going to reiterate how much I support tough sentencing for criminal sexual conduct criminals, and the sentence has to fit the crime. I always believed that, and especially in cases as it relates to the Romeo and Juliet situations, and I believe our judges here on our island are very capable of making that decision on our own. And just as the intent was when I introduced the Justice Safety Valve Act, Madam Speaker, back, I want to say 2 or 3 terms ago, and I must admit it and take blame for myself for not looking at this bill very carefully, but like I said earlier, Attorney Steve Attore, who's the Executive Director for the Public Defender Service Corporation, and the Attorney General's office was asking me to look at some revisions on the for the Jack and Jill or the Romeo and Juliet situations that we wanted to further put some teeth on. That there was some issues as it relates to those kind of cases that literally needed the guidance from the judges who hear these cases. So with all due respect, this bill, and as I support tougher sentences for criminal sexual conduct crimes, this amended version of the bill doesn't look into the considerations of the Romeo and Juliet cases. And I'm going to ask you, Madam Speaker, if I may, even to move to set this bill aside so that I can get further clarification from the Attorney General's office, because even as late as last term, there was some revisions that the Attorney General's office wanted to look into both the Safety Valve Act bill and the Romeo and Juliet statute that is in place today, that we literally worked hard to craft to make sure that those that are students that were having relationships with those that were just turning to become adults and that were still, I guess, in high school or in school, that they would that would be a different situation. So if I may, or even ask for a couple of minutes just so that I can at least look at calling the Attorney General's office and asking the prosecution's office for their intent, because I know that this was literally talked about in working closely with the judiciary branch 2 terms ago when I authored, 2 or 3 terms ago when I authored the Romeo and Juliet and the Safety Valve Act statutes.
Madam Speaker, just for a point of information, there is no Romeo and Juliet state for 13 and younger. If a couple is both 15 and under, it's handled by the family court and the record's sealed. If the 17-year-old has a relationship with a 14-year-old or older, it's a third-degree criminal sexual conduct and not covered by this bill, Madam Speaker.
Thank you for the point of information, Senator Ada.
Thank-
Vice Speaker, are you making
Yes,
a motion then?
and I'm making a motion, Madam Speaker, because, yes, there are provisions already in statute as it relates to statutory rape, CSC, under the age 15 and under. And the intent of this bill, if initiated and passed, would literally take the opportunity for our judges to consider criminal sexual conduct cases on a case-by-case basis. Please don't get me wrong, Madam Speaker, and my colleagues. I do support tough sentences on criminal sexual conduct cases, but I do want to make sure that the intent of those cases that have that kind of relationship, and whether we want to accept it or not, there are a lot of high school students, seniors who have dates, who have girlfriends or boyfriends under the age of 18 or 17 and 16. And I want to make sure that those provisions are protected and giving the judges, because they have that expertise, and that's why the safety valve was created for this, and that's the only reason why I'm asking for just a little bit of more time, just to confirm and see where the intent of the Attorney General's office. I know that the good author of this said that the AG's office was in support of the intent of the bill prohibiting a court from departing from the mandatory minimal sentences of the criminal sexual conduct. But as you note in the public hearing, Public Defender Service Corporation, through its executive director, was adamant that there were some situations that were not included and that this bill would impede on that. So I would just, with a lot of respect, ask that a motion just to set aside.
Yes, Vice, set aside the bill temporarily on our agenda. On that motion, on the motion to set aside Bill number 8-36 temporarily, is there any objection? Objection? All right, so all in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Motion fails. Vice Speaker, you still have the floor on the motion, on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I will continue to try and work closely with the Division of Prosecution Office with the Attorney General's office, and know that this is the intent of my concern as it relates to this bill, and again would reiterate that I am in support of tough sentences for those convicted of criminal sexual conduct crimes, but there was a purpose that I authored the Justice Safety Valve Act, working closely with the judiciary branch several terms ago and making it become statute, that I believe that our judges literally have the expertise to be given that opportunity, that in case of unextenuating circumstances or just situations that happen, that they could step away, and I just have my concerns about the full intent of this bill without including that means of the Romeo and Juliet situations. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. On the bill, is there anyone on the bill? Senator Torres, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do not dispute the impassioned sentiments of the mover of this bill or many of those who would support this bill, 8-36. But I am very concerned with the ramifications of this bill should it become law. We have to take to heart the testimony of the Public Defender Service Corporation. I think that that's testimony submitted by Steve Hattori speaks volumes about why we need to take pause in considering this type of legislation. Guam has a very unfortunate statistics of extremely high teen pregnancy, very high child abuse, a lot of criminal sexual abuse that involves children. And it is a horrible situation, most definitely. We also have a situation, though, where our young children are very sexually active, some even birthing children as young as 10 years old on Guam. What I worry about with this legislation is it absolutely takes the discretion away from judges when they are dealing with cases. Every case has its certain circumstance that has to be dealt with within the judicial framework. And I recall when, for example, we were passing a piece of legislation in the 35th Guam Legislature that dealt with termination of parental rights of rapists. One of the biggest concerns that many of us went back and forth with was where it involved the rape in a rape that is defined by statute. In other words, amongst minors, that includes minors. And in that discussion, this body, not this body, but the previous body in the 35th, came to the resolution that we needed to have a carve-out for certain circumstances where the victims are between the ages of 14 and not older than 17. And this legislature at the time, thought that it was in the best discretion of the courts to determine whether the termination of a rapist's parental rights without going to trial should also apply to that age category. And we determined that no, it was best that the court decide all of that, decide on the fact that there is a rape and decide on whether termination of parental rights is appropriate. I bring all this up because it is no different from any circumstance that involves minors. The fact that we have a prevalence on Guam suggests, in terms of taking discretion away from the courts, who are entrusted to weigh all the evidence and to come up with the best resolution, taking both sides into account. The best resolution for the victims and the best resolution and also in consideration of the defendant and their situation. The justice safety valve had in the testimony by the public defender on page 2 of 3, and I'll read from it. He says that the Justice Safety Valve Act encourages resolution of criminal offenses by avoiding trial. It provides victims with a greater voice over the sentencing options of the judges. It encourages the reporting and prosecution of criminal sexual conduct offenses. As a public defender, we hope that this august body does not limit the discretion currently exercised by the trial judges. Madam Speaker, that is my main concern here. We must, because of the circumstances on Guam, we must understand that, as the public defender also pointed out, this type of legislation won't deter and won't necessarily solve anything. But what it may do is it may cause greater harm where right now the Justice Safety Valve Act provides that level of discretion for the judges to determine what is in the best interest of the victim. Prosecution sounds very encouraging, but if we were to consider what it would take for a victim to go through a trial and successfully arrive at a prosecution is a very difficult path that many people will not choose to endure. Victims have a tremendous amount of trauma already. Going to trial is another level of trauma that oftentimes requires them to repeat the offense and to suffer through that. As the public defender pointed out, the Justice Safety Valve Act is one way that allows them to settle and to work on remediating the situation outside of trial. So it has its benefits to the victim. And so I don't support this measure because I believe that while we are compelled to do everything we can for our children, for victims of crime, for sexual assault against our young individuals in the community, there must be a level of discretion, especially when it involves minors. And the reason is, if we were to think about, in a very practical way, kids do stupid things by nature of the fact that they are immature. And we should leave it to the judges to determine in certain circumstances, including where there is statutory rape, where it is best to determine the proper sentencing and resolution of a crime, especially in statutory rape cases. And that's my main concern here, and I urge my colleagues, please consider from the point of view from the public defender who has to deal with these all the times, weighing in the practical things. Trial sounds wonderful, conviction sounds wonderful if you can get there, but most likely you're doing the victim a greater disservice by requiring them to go through that process, where the Justice Safety Valve Act is an avenue that can address their concerns without going to trial necessarily. So I don't rise in support of this. I believe that there are better ways that we can deal with it that won't cause further harm, especially in statutory rape cases. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, on the main motion, on the bill, is there anyone who would like to be recognized? Senator Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the bill. And I appreciate the concerns that have been expressed by my colleagues on what the ramifications may be. However, Madam Speaker, if you look at just the title itself, convicted of first or second degree criminal sexual conduct. This is not an allegation. This is not anything short of a proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a person that was convicted, and in most cases convicted by a jury of his or her peers, that the crime that they were charged with, the crime that they are going to be now convicted of, was so heinous enough that based on statute that was determined and defined by a body such as this, have decided to designate it in that fashion, in that order. And It's in that conviction of the first and second. We're not talking about third or fourth degree criminal sexual conduct. We're talking about crimes that, according to statute, was really so immoral and so against the thinking and the understanding and the recognition of the community that it was given that high a degree of designation that this was going to apply to. I really don't want, and I can see, and unfortunately, and it's not our job in this hall to legislate morality. It's our job in this hall to legislate things that are in line with what our community standards are. And granted that there can be some argument in the hall, and rightfully so, about what those community standards. I stand in support of this because my community standard, the side of the community that I'm going to represent, is the side that says that first and second degree, that individuals convicted of first and second degree felony should have the proper punishment, irregardless of age, circumstance, situation. That was something that was decided on by a court, by a jury of peers, by a group of individuals who are entrusted to decide that fate. There's nothing in it that says that they have to totally agree with it, but they have to decide it. And they have to decide it not in a base of a simple majority, in most cases. It's decided amongst all individuals, especially something as heinous as first or second degree. This legislative body itself has the power to change the definitions of some of these things if it is, in fact, if we don't want certain crimes or certain ways that crimes are committed by certain members, by certain ages, to be seen as first and second degree felony. We have the power to do that here. And why haven't we? But in the meantime, this is what it is. I can just only imagine the trauma that is experienced by a victim of a first or a second degree criminal sexual conduct. And chances are, the kind of punishment that they would like to see imposed on their perpetrators, on the individuals that attack them, goes against the grain of what we have set out as the punishment, the rightful punishment. And I'll put that in quotes, rightful. And so if there was any leniency that we needed to consider on this thing, that's a process that could have happened before that conviction occurred. Madam Speaker, you know this full well as an officer of the court. There are processes, there are ways that these things can be settled without having to go through that whole process where a final conviction is provided. And that conviction is going to be contingent upon how the law is presented, how the law reads. And that law reads the same way based on how this body has dictated it should be read. Furthermore, while it basically says they can't be subjected to the departures or the enhancements or the reductions provided, and that we're taking away the discretion, I venture to say not so. I can just imagine the judge that would have to make this determination, how it pains them and how it bothers them to have to do this. I don't think there's any judge in any conversation that I had that said that it was easy for them to impose penalty on all the individuals that they have had to impose it on. That's a heavy burden. Yes, I understand that. And there's the legal process that provides them. I mean, yes, it comes down to, you hope it never happens, but sometimes it comes down to what side of the bed they wake up in the morning. I apologize, that's just, but while you hope that it's not so, who knows? So what this legislation attempts is to ensure that, yes, if you are convicted of a first or second degree penalty, there should be ramifications. If you don't want to be convicted of a first degree or second degree penalty, one simple process: don't do it. And if it bothers you that as a result of what this legislation is going to, quote unquote, impose now and as far as guideline for sentencing, we have the power in this body to rewrite the statute that they have to follow, that they have to abide by. We have the power in this body to rewrite the circumstances and the events that have to be taken into consideration. I hope to, and I pray to God that I nor any one of us in this room ever have to confront a day when a situation that is related to this is we're going to have to deal with it in our personal capacities. Call me old school, call me old fashioned, call me law enforcement, call me blue, whatever you want me to call me. But if you feel that you have every right to do the crime, just know you're going to do the time. And if this body wants to say that's not necessarily a crime, you have the right and the power to change it. But I'm going to represent that side of the community that says no. If you did it, pay for it. And I hope that, again, not to take away from many of the concerns that were brought up by previous, but we have the power to be able to change that language on those circumstances. I may not necessarily agree with it, but the majority in this body is what determines it. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Blas. Senator San Augustine, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, as I look at the committee report, ma'am, it cites the Guam Code annotate, but I keep hearing about this safety valve, I'm trying to find it. Is it in the committee report? I'm trying to find it, and it's not that long. But I'm just trying to find it so that because as I read it, if you're convicted, because before you get to conviction, like my colleague brought up, there's all third degree or nothing. Okay? And when we talk about statutory rape, I think that ended when Frank and I left the police department. It's called criminal sexual conduct. Because when I was there in '77, it was statutory rape. Okay, so just going down the line on the committee report, ma'am, I just want to know if it's somewhere there so I can read it, because it keeps referring to if you're convicted of first degree, you got 25 years. Have a nice day. Okay, and so forth. It says that.
All right. If you would you like to yield, Senator San Augustine?
I have a point of information, Madam Speaker.
On that
I do
question?
apologize.
Is that
yes,
on that
if I may,
question?
I'll just refer him to, and my colleagues to Public Law 33-22, which was signed on May 7th, 2015, and it was bill number...
I guess he just wants the language of the statute, if someone has that and would
Yeah.
like to yield.
Madam
Senator
Speaker,
San Augustine.
we can talk all about where the laws and all that stuff. I'm looking at the committee report. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a bill that's reported out by committee, and every time somebody says safety valve, monogagi safety valve, and lengmo gipeta, monogagi peta. Let's just be specific, because I believe that as a former police officer, if you're convicted, have a nice day. Do what's right, but follow the law. Have a nice day. And that's all I'm after. If somebody could show me in the committee report the safety valve, because maybe for some of you, I've got grandkids, and I sure as hell hope I never become a victim of this. I tell my grandkids, if you got a problem with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, fix it. And don't say when you do the things you shouldn't be doing, don't complain about it because you broke up. And make it be you become the victim, but it was okay at the time when you were together. That's what I'm concerned about. And that's when I hear the Romeo and Juliet, I understand. But I just want to see where the safety valve does apply, because based on this, I don't see it. And all I see is that if you commit first or second degree, serve the time as imposed by law.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. We're going to take a recess until 2 p.m. Recess until 2 p.m.